Hi, everyone. I chose to do my informative speech about the negative stigma that surrounds nuclear energy and nuclear power. Um, nuclear energy has made a reputation for itself among the general public that, for most people, is about fear and anxiety. But what they don't see is that, despite the few incidents that has happened over the lifespan of nuclear energy, it has been a safe, efficient, and clean way to produce energy for the last several decades. Over the past 80 years, nuclear energy has become a major player in the search for an environmentally friendly replacement to coal power. The start of nuclear power was in the first half of the 20th century when they first discovered that you could split an atom and release energy. And after the United States dropped the two atomic bombs on Japan in World War II, the interest in nuclear power has increased exponentially and became an idea largely associated with the future. Since the desire to find the safest and most efficient form of nuclear energy has increased, but a few incidents along the way have soured the name of it, and the negative idea around nuclear energy, because of these incidents, has stuck since then. Um, so, nuclear power, you might be wondering if it has been proved to be safe and efficient, then why do most people still have a negative idea about it? Well, the only thing that someone would hear without researching into it about nuclear energy is from general news stations and on television, and they would tell you about the disasters that have happened, none of the good things that are going on, and the advancements that are making nuclear power safer and even more efficient. A good way to think of it is that airplanes, statistically, are the safest way for someone to travel, but some people are afraid of them because if you watch the news, then they report on every single plane crash that happens because they're so rare you're able to make a story about it. But if you were to hear about every car crash, which is a much more common way to get around, if you were to hear about every car crash, then you would never want to ride in a car again because car crashes are far more common, hundreds a day, if not thousands. I found an article about the Fukushima disaster, which, if you don't know what that is, in 2011, a tsunami hit a nuclear power plant and caused a partial meltdown. But the article states that it talks about the future of nuclear energy in Japan and says that nuclear energy is no more dangerous than any other industrial system. It says that plenty of other industrial systems that the Japanese rely on were overwhelmed that day and failed. A mostly contained meltdown of the reactor would not be the worst event of the month. The point of this is that despite the reactors being taken out, there was no more harm done than and there was no more harm done from this than from any of the other systems that failed. The article goes on and it says that climate activists, despite rallying for other power sources like solar and wind, know that nuclear power is the answer to the clean energy crisis. Another supporter, William Tucker, talks about it's difficult to be a supporter of nuclear energy today because of the negativity around it, but it has massive benefits still. He talks about Fukushima leading to many people straying away from supporting it, but he still supports it. And his reasons is that, and the same reasons that I have, there have been natural gas explosions, coal mine collapses, and thousands upon thousands of deaths from coal and natural gas. But we don't hear about those. Other energy sources are just as dangerous as nuclear energy, if not more so, all while being less efficient and producing more emissions into the atmosphere. There are 281 coal mines in West Virginia and 449 in Kentucky. There are only 45 uranium mines in the entire world. These numbers are staggering, and it shows just how much more environmentally conscious nuclear energy is than coal. He says that for coal, every 30 days there is a 100-car train that delivers it. While for nuclear energy, there is a 6-truck convoy that comes once every 2 years, which shows how drastic the difference is in material consumption. And each one of those 100 train cars produces tons of emissions into the atmosphere, and not an ounce of emissions is caused from any nuclear power, other than for constructing plants. The same can be said about nuclear energy with these advantages in power plants that you only hear about the bad things and never any of the good. Um, a paper written about the impact of natural gas versus nuclear energy on the environment in India talks about the um, that nuclear energy isn't only better for the environment because of less emissions, but can actually improve the ecological quality of an area. Um, in India, where the study was concluded, it did this, and rather than putting workers and civilians in danger, as you might think nuclear energy would, it improved the overall quality of the area that the reactor was constructed. Excuse me. This misrepresentation of nuclear energy by mainstream media is has constructed a false sense of fear around nuclear energy that has no reasonable. There's no reason for this negativity. But simply put, when a nuclear reactor is installed in an area, the area around them becomes more economically improved, and areas of India where this was studied could be transformed because of this. The same effects could happen in the United States, but the safe disposal of nuclear waste is also a large concern for many people. But this study demonstrated that the possibility it demonstrated the possibility that waste can be safely stored, monitored, and it can even be recovered if you need to. But you might be wondering, could nuclear energy have more effects than just reactors on land to power cities and towns? In the pursuit of using nuclear energy to its full potential, the United States had made a ship called the NS Savannah that was powered by a nuclear reactor on board the ship. It was the first of its kind. It was designed to be half passenger ship, like a cruise ship for people to sail on, and half cargo ship to transport across the sea. So it would make a drastic leap in maritime trade, where a typical cargo ship would burn nearly 20,000 barrels of oil for a trip around the world, but the NS Savannah would only use a couple pounds of nuclear material, and that's it. The goal was to show that an atomic powered future could be possible, and demonstrated that nuclear power, despite being known for the massive destructive potential, such as the atomic bombs dropped on Japan, could be used peacefully. Despite the worries around the ship, since it was powered by a nuclear reactor, it managed to gather support and had a very successful maiden voyage. It stopped at ports around the world and allowed people to marvel at the ship and see what was thought to be the future of transportation. However, they didn't see when they were making it. They didn't see the future that was all the calls that had to be made months ahead of time to see if the ship was even allowed to stop at the port. And the amount of ports that didn't allow the ship to stop due to concerns of radiation was staggering. So this false idea that nuclear energy was not to be trusted and dangerous, um, was enough for many areas to just deny access to it to be in their ports at all. So um, it made the ship's initial success die off pretty quick because people stopped accepting it. And it now sits in a museum that represents the struggle for nuclear energy to become accepted by most people. The nuclear-powered submarines used by the Navy are also a very good demonstration of nuclear power. They're able to stay underwater for months at a time without surfacing, which would be impossible if it weren't for nuclear power. These are very beneficial not only for the military but also for the rest of the world, as we can have nuclear missiles always within range of Russia or any other country that might be a threat, so that if they decide to act first, then we can retaliate as quickly as possible, as we have a nuclear submarine just off their coast. So it shows that the impact of nuclear power spreads far beyond just powering our cities and towns, as most people think with a massive nuclear power plant. And the irony that what stands between us and nuclear destruction is powered by nuclear energy, which I thought was kind of funny. Um, but that's the very basis of the fear that the public has about it, because you hear about nuclear missiles, which are scary, and you don't hear about nuclear powered stuff that's safe. Um, this also has caused the nuclear submarines have caused more money to be able to be spent on other technology specifically designed to hunt these submarines. I thought this was interesting. Um, Russia built a VTOL aircraft that was designed to be. It was designed to hunt submarines, but it ended up failing because the deadlines were too short and technological feats required just couldn't be accomplished at that time. The point with this, while it's interesting, is that the main effects that nuclear energy has are concerned with safety and the environmental impact, but also affects many things that someone would never think of. In this case, it caused new technological advancements with making that VTOL aircraft. Stuff that had not been able to be possible before was it had to be possible in order to make this submarine hunting vehicle. Even though it never came through, it still inspired many advancements in technology and military vehicles. Um, and excuse me. And these nuclear submarines also brought about the idea of a nuclear powered plane that could stay in the air for months at a time without having to refuel. The only reason they would have to land is for repairs or, oil, stuff like that. This idea was brought to fruition with the U.S. We made a prototype of a B-36 Peacemaker, which was a bomber after World War II, a very, very big bomber. And this prototype was called the NB-36H, and it was powered by a nuclear reactor. But sadly, it was decommissioned as it just wasn't what the military was looking for at the time. We wanted a faster jet bomber rather than one that could stay in the air for long periods of time. So sadly, that concept wasn't explored greatly because it just wasn't what we were looking for at the time. But it brought upon a whole new idea for transportation and defense because you could travel across the world without having to refuel. And when you did have to land to refuel, all you have to do is replace a little piece of uranium and then take off again. So if it was used in a commercial setting, then it could fly someone from place to place, and when it lands, all that has to be done is maintenance and refueling, which would save a lot of time in airports for people that are waiting on their flight. But pretty much in conclusion, the negative idea associated with nuclear energy, it should be gone. It should not be here anymore, as nuclear energy has been proven to be very, very safe, and the gains from nuclear energy far outweigh the cons. And I think that it's time to welcome nuclear energy as the inevitable clean power source of the future. But the negative stigma that has been around for so long because of Chernobyl, because of Fukushima, just haven't gone away. Even though Chernobyl was not the fault of nuclear energy, it was because the Soviet Union did not manage it properly. It was not managed how it should have been. There's a documentary, there's a series actually, about it that is very, very interesting. It goes into detail about it. I can't remember. I think it's on Hulu. But it shows that it wasn't about nuclear power. That's not what caused it. It was because the Soviet Union was poor, mismanaged, and just didn't know how to use a nuclear power plant. So nuclear power has proved to be safe, other than incidents that were out of its control, a tsunami and the Soviet Union. So I think that we should welcome it.